Welcome to the AVAIL Podcast, where we dig deep and talk about the art of leadership. My name is Virgil Sierra, your AVAIL Podcast host and lead pastor of Vertical Church, aka Iglesia Vertical in South Florida. Today, we are sitting down with Jason Twombly. Jason is a spiritual development coach, helping men transform pain into power. And today we're going to discuss his new book, Jesus Comforts, and the AVAIL article he wrote in one of our recent issues. So lean in, leaders, and let's get started. Jason, it's great to have you as a guest on the AVAIL Podcast. How are you feeling today?
Hey, Virgil. Thank you so much for having me. I can't think of any better guide by a person named Virgil to bring me through this journey of the podcast. So thanks for having me, and I'm filled with joy today. A lot of gratitude.
Yes, I appreciate that, and I'm personally looking forward to this conversation because I believe the message that God has given you, the passion and heart that He's given you, is very relevant today. And speaking as a pastor, as a ministry leader, I know that there's a lot that God has placed in your hands that I think I can benefit from, not only in my personal life, but with men that I'm leading. So before we jump into the meat of the conversation, can you share a little bit about yourself? Who is Jason Twombly?
Absolutely. These days, I'm a spiritual development coach working primarily with men. And as you mentioned, I help them transform their pain into power, hurt into healing, and wounds into wisdom. And I do that under the banner of Heartsmith coaching. I'm also a lead trainer with Luke 10, and that's a movement reimagining what church could look like when it stops being an experience only with a sage on a stage, and it becomes something more like heart-to-heart connection. And that's really at the intersection of real spiritual formation and relational maturity. So I'm here in South Carolina. I'm from New York, so I talk a little bit like that sometimes. So I could be indirect and very direct.
Yeah.
And just really glad to be here. Thanks.
All right, let's get into this. You write a book, Jesus Comforts, right? And I think even just in talking about it, I think it's something that's been on your heart for some years now, and now it's come to life. Why did you write this book, and who did you have in mind as you wrote it?
Yeah, been carrying it since around 2012, Jesus Comforts, and it really is a devotional from heartache to healing. And the thread that runs most of through my coaching and my book is that spiritual maturity cannot outpace emotional maturity. And most men that I work with, most leaders, they're building upward without building inward. And that's the work that I do. And I'm really specializing in helping men transform their pain into power. I call it man grief. Could be loss of any kind, because if we don't transform that pain into something purposeful or powerful, we'll transmit that pain onto the people closest to us. So for me, I found, and I'm finding, that it's easy to build a ministry, a business, a platform, and still be a stranger to your own heart.
Wow.
And eventually that catches up with you. I know, because it caught up with me. So for me, as a missionary back in the 90s, I was a young man on fire, burning with first love for Jesus, ready to give my life on the mission field, building. And I had to be interrupted in my life to slow down enough to get married. And so for me, the reason why I wrote the book is I had married Adrian in 1997, and we built a life, served the Lord, raised 3 treasured kids, building, preaching, pastoring, and I mastered the external work, and I really liked doing that. But what I missed was mastering my interior. And for me, the book started when my world was split in two. And so, in short, there was a medication error in a hospital, and there was a slow unraveling nightmare. And the woman who radiated peace and grace, she went to be home with Jesus after a brain surgery and brain cancer. So I had to really learn how to process my own pain into power, take care of my own heart, because I had to do and tell my children what no father would ever wants to say, that if Jesus doesn't do a miracle here, mommy's going to get to heaven before we do. And then she did.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, I think the things that we underestimate is, how is God going to use this, right? We're walking through life and things that we not only aren't expecting, but even would wish didn't happen. And I think there's power in what you're sharing. And before I ask you the next question, I could just, I love what you mentioned. You can't build upward until you build inward. This whole concept of people who maybe have known Jesus or even gone to church for many years, but they're not that many years old. They're still in diapers because they haven't matured on the inside. So this is huge. You describe in your book, you describe Jesus as meeting us in the middle of heartache, not after it. What does that actually look like in real life when someone's in the thick of pain, loss, brokenness?
We have so many well-intentioned friends and family members, and oftentimes in Christian circles, we love to quote Romans 8:28, throw platitudes. For me, it was sitting in the pain without Jesus spiritually bypassing any of it and him just staying. And so a lot of times I was crying out for answers, but the Lord didn't really show up with answers. Instead, he showed up for me in the middle of the day in my prayer room with a voice that was honest, that was unafraid of the dark. And he just sat with me where I was at. And he was able to, from the inside out, kindle a healing torch that just really brought healing to me. And he was able to let my tears be planted in the soil of Father's fertile landscape that just showed up to be joy plants in time to come. So he was able to really just draw near. And for me, that was something that not everyone was capable of doing. So I liken this book as pulling up a chair to someone that might be in a real place of pain and just staying, because a lot of times people just don't stay. And I felt like his voice just kept me from jumping off a bridge and just staying.
Yeah. I think as I think about it, for men especially, which obviously is, you have a strong calling to men specifically, but for men especially, and even speaking as a leader, right? There can be this pressure to, I got to stay strong, I got to stay composed. But that's a little bit easier said than done sometimes. How does Jesus Comforts, the devotional book you've written, how does it challenge that idea of having to be strong?
I think the real strength is looking at Jesus, who's the ballast between toughness and tenderness. And ignoring your interior isn't strength, it's a liability. And the man who hasn't done emotional work will eventually export his unresolved pain onto the people that he leads. His team, his marriage, his kids. It's like that, proverbial beach ball that we put under the pool.
Yeah.
Period of time, it's just going to zip up at the most inopportune time. So the strongest thing a man can do for his family is the work on himself. And that's not soft. It's the most courageous thing that I know a man can do. And that's where my training and even being raised as a kid, it really wasn't there. It wasn't until I learned how to heartsmith my own heart and to realize that I didn't have the tools for what I was feeling. So the training I received was all about bypassing that pain spiritually. Push through, pray harder, keep moving. But there's something more powerful than grit, and that's the power of vulnerability and paying attention, because whatever you bury rules you, and whatever the mind suppresses, the body stores. And I was so full of buried things, and it wasn't until I learned how to excavate the inner landscape that I found where I was losing power is now being replaced by strength.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think it's true. I think even as I think of not just life and college, even seminary for pastors and ministry leaders, this is not necessarily a subject that is, at least from my perspective, that is addressed significantly or even at all sometimes. And I think it's so important. In your journey, Jason, in your personal journey and walk, what have you learned? You alluded to it a little bit a few moments ago, but what have you learned regarding God's presence in those seasons where you feel overwhelmed, where you feel undone? I mean, because I think it's very likely and possible that some people that are listening right now might be there right now. And so what advice, what tips, what counsel, what encouragement can you bring to someone in that situation regarding just God showing up?
Yeah, I think the kingdom is righteousness, peace, and joy, and 2/3 of which are emotional. And when we don't have that emotional intelligence, we might call it all spiritual warfare. But we can look at the Psalms and see that they were doing neuroscience even before we did, because they were allowed to access the sorrow and the joy. And so for me, the real work began by paying attention to the difficult emotions, and I had to learn to care for my heart. And
Yeah.
when I discovered that forging that, I allowed the blade of sorrow to carve more capacity in my heart to even hold the presence of the Lord. And that is how I found leadership from the inside out. Because the emotions that we typically avoid, that I would avoid in the past, or the pain, wasn't the enemy of strength, it was the material. And then moving into community as a crucible, that became the forge for me to catch up my nervous system to my theology. And that's what I find the Heartsmith does. He doesn't avoid the fire, he steps into it and shapes something stronger on the other side. And I found an otherworldly presence of the Lord by slowing down, facing the darkness, and I found the goal that was waiting for me. And it wasn't difficult. It was actually, that's what saved my life.
Yeah. I wonder, again, from your perspective, your experience, and how God has worked in your life, and even the Holy Spirit has empowered you now in this ministry and spiritual development coaching. Why do you think this is such a prevalent issue? Because it would be one thing to say, oh, a few people go through this kind of darkness of the soul. But why do you think it, even Jason, even among leaders, spiritual leaders, pastors, this is not necessarily this is only for this kind of person or this kind of, demographic, right? Why is it so prevalent?
I think a lot of our training is built on the left brain platform, where we're just giving out information and it's really low on transformation. And unless dads are showing their sons, or moms are showing their daughters, how to develop the skill of comfort, how to develop relational maturity, how to tend the fires of grief, those things just get locked up inside of our bodies, so that we could ignore it, and be attached to people in community, but press down our authenticity. And that might work for our 20s and our 30s, but once we start to grow into maturity and stuff hits the fan, the wagon wheels of our life start falling apart. And then we move into what Richard Rohr calls the second half of life. And it's then when we need a guide to show us that what we constructed and what was good in the first half of life was necessary, but it also needs to be torn down to go to the place where we need to go. And unless we have someone to show us how to do that, we can remain arrested in our development, have all of the charisma of any kind of a leader, but also stay in the infant stage of maturity.
Yeah, that's good. I can see there's so many nuggets, so many just gold nuggets in this book, Jesus Comforts, which is written as a devotional style book, kind of for people to take it, on a journey. I want to sidestep and transition a little bit to talk about an article you wrote for one of our AVAIL issues, which is the article, The Heartsmith's Map. Talk to us about this article. Why did you write it?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that men particularly can get lost in the whole realm of emotions. And so without a map, I find that sadness or extreme sadness can turn to depression, can hijack what we're doing. Or if we're not paying attention to our anger and it's not clean anger, it can also sabotage a business deal. And so by learning how to slow down, do some breath work, go through my Dawn framework, the Heartsmith Maps is a framework that I built from just experience and years of working with men, because our emotional lives mirror the natural world. And so I picked fire, air, water, earth, the elements. They're not just around us, they're within us. And so a man who doesn't understand his internal landscape is being led by it rather than leading through it. And the map in the article gives language for what's happening inside so we can do something with it. Because if we can't name it, we won't be able to tame it.
That's good. You describe in the article leaders, for example, who have built outward success. We alluded to this already, but they lack the inner map. Where do you see that showing up the most in men and in leaders right now as you're leading people, as you're guiding people?
I think it goes back to spiritual maturity cannot outpace emotional maturity.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of times with pastors, I'm one of them, they can fall into what I call conversational narcissism, where they're not present enough and paying attention, but a lot of times it's easy for pastors to drive with an agenda. And so a lot of men that I work with, they're spiritually sincere but emotionally underdeveloped, and they just don't know it. And so a lot of the training is just grit, pray through pain, don't process it, and to surrender what they haven't yet named. And that emotional work isn't a detour from spiritual formation. It's the actual road to maturity.
Yeah, as you're talking, my father was a pastor. He's a founding pastor of our church. I'm a pastor. As I think sometimes, and I don't know that it's necessarily a rule, but even as I think a little bit in the generation or generations before mine, in ministry leadership, right, in pastoral leadership, I guess I find that it was very uncommon or unlikely for pastors to express weakness or to acknowledge shortcomings with anybody, and even in conversations I've had with my father in these seasons of life, he's older and passed on leadership to us, but there was a generation that really, it seems to me, I'd love to hear your thoughts, that had a hard time, or maybe were even taught, don't expose your vulnerabilities, don't share that. I mean, what perspective do you have regarding kind of generational view of dealing with heart issues and soul care?
Yeah, I'm really glad that I think people are waking up to what has not been working in the past, and that is the armor that has been on us. My dad was like that, and the armor there didn't just go away. It showed up in my adult life until I learned how to transform that armor into something more sacred. But the thing about the armor of not being vulnerable because it's seen as weakness, it not only keeps people out, but it's also a cage that keeps me arrested in my development. And
Wow.
I think people are, even in the church, they've been, in men's groups, they're looking to, help men grow in vulnerability and see weakness as power. But that often goes awry when people are encouraged to be vulnerable. Maybe, Virgil, you've seen this in men's groups, but it's done outside of secure attachment. It always
Right.
ends in a train wreck. And so what I do in my men's groups is I create a container for men to learn how to be safe with themselves so that we can provide safety in the vaults of the container of the men. And once men experience what that is like, where they can show up and find men not trying to fix them, but being an empathetic witness to what they're doing, that changes the dynamic. And when men can do it with each other, I did it last night with a group of guys stewarding our man grief. Once we do it in practice in the dojo together, then we can do it with our wives and with our kids, and we become what I call heart whisperers.
That's good. I'd like for you to touch on this because I think those of us who pastor or lead ministries often nowadays we tend to lean a lot on the power of small groups and the relationships that happen there. And like you're saying, what advice from your experience, your knowledge, your perspective, what advice do you have, for example, for us to consider as we offer men's groups, right? And like what are some key things for this type of health and this type of vulnerability to be not only experienced, but for it to be done well and done right?
Get trained. And so I'm a trainer to trainers on how to do this, how to train facilitators. And it only takes a little bit of practice with a mentor to apprentice to do this. And so, First Corinthians talks about everyone having a voice. We like to say that every voice matters because everyone has a voice. But I think there's a real gift to facilitating, with a facilitator to a small group can get out of the way and ask really good, powerful questions to educe the Christ within those people. And that facilitator knows how to do that through gently curious questions, through knowing how to handle heavy emotions that show up, and then also by listening to the hearts of the people, but also following the spirit in the conversation, so that it really does become heart-to-heart connection. And it's a real art to facilitating, and I really can see us moving from just one expert bringing us somewhere to the facilitator that can draw out the expertise in each and every heart. And that's what I train people to do.
That's so good. That's so good. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about how people can connect with you, because I think that might be helpful for some. I want to go back to something you mentioned. You kind of skimmed over the elements of fire, air, water, and earth as part of a framework of emotional leadership and landscape, I think is the terminology you used. Can you just maybe touch a little bit on that? Because that has me intrigued.
Yeah, for sure. I think we all have different makeups of what it looks like to be human. We have the fire of blood inside of us, and so I could stare at a fire for a long time. But fire reminds us of ambition, of anger. Fire is really powerful, and so I work with men and their emotions of where they feel in their body. And fire is good, but it's also destructive. We need a fire and a fireplace, and a real concentrated fire is productive, like a laser, or you can, that's how maybe you made your breakfast this morning. So I work with men to pay attention. When a guy feels lost and clueless, I usually talk about, let's light a fire in the woods, and that's anger. And I'll start with a man's anger. It's usually invisible, out of control, or bottled up. And that is the emotion of anger. That's one of the most intelligent emotions. Some guys are locked in earth. They're in their bodies. They're so rigid, they're not going anywhere. And so we work on that element of earth and how to become more present, less rigid, and how to be grounded with that king energy. That also opens us up to water. Why is water important? Water is super powerful. It can go to the lowest place, work through any obstacles, and that is the softer element of our emotional landscape and how to navigate that. I remember one of my clients, I said to him, I'm going to teach you how to surf your emotions. And he laughed. He goes, I don't think you can do that. So we can't choose the waves that come our way, but we could develop the skill to surf through them, and that was really helpful in the boardroom. And then the element of air. A lot of times we can just get caught up in our head, and we want to come down into our bodies. And by accessing the very gift that Spirit has given us is breath. Breath is spirit, breath is life, breath is mystery. So I do a lot of breath work for guys to somatically get into our bodies, feel our feet on the ground, and not be run by the mass. Logic is a great tool that we have. It's a great servant, but a lousy master. And so by combining all of the four elements, we can stay in the river of integration that keeps us surprised at the own unfolding of the Christ likeness inside of us.
That's great. I think one of the cool things that I love about the AVAIL journal that we offer at AVAIL is that we have great content thanks to contributors and authors like yourself. And this article specifically, I think, is going to be helpful for so many people, the Heartsmith's map. There's one more thing before we let people know how they can connect with you and kind of get more on the resource side. You mentioned the Dawn method, and how a leader can use this in a real moment of pressure. Can you kind of walk us through the Dawn method?
Yeah, I love the Dawn method so much. It's just a real practical tool. It could be like a guided meditation or just an opportunity to slow down and look at emotions as not the problem to solve, but their intelligence to decode. Emotions aren't our enemies, they're our allies. And sometimes the heaviest emotions They just have to pass through like the weather, and they're messengers with some information. They're not directives, they're data. So dawn is a way to meet these emotions with curiosity instead of resistance, transforming the heat into insight. So briefly, it's taking the four letters DAWN. D is detect. Detect what's going on in any situation. You're in a business situation or a family situation. It's just slowing down, taking a beat, and the first movement is notice what's happening without judgment, with self-compassion. Putting your hand on your heart, taking a deep breath. What I'm feeling right now is what? I'm feeling a pit in my stomach. I'm feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. It's just detecting what is going on. And then the next movement is A, accepting. Without harshness, without criticism. It's accepting what's here without trying to change it. It doesn't mean that you want the emotion to stay. It's not surrender, but it's okay. It's okay that I feel like this, and I know how to feel safe in my own body. So there's a difference between fighting the emotion and allowing it. So we're allowing it to be there because it won't be there forever. And then W is wonder. And this is all maybe done with your eyes closed. It could be 5 minutes or 15 minutes. Wonder, what are these emotions trying to communicate to me? Why is this shame trigger happening again? Why am I acting like a teenager catastrophically to something that doesn't even merit that kind of reaction? And what is this emotion trying to protect me from? If this emotion could speak, what would it say? So that is being curious and wondering. And then lastly, that brings us to nurture. Men are really great givers, but they're lousy receivers. And a really good leader receives twice as much as he gives. So developing the skill to nourish and to nurture. What do I need from this? Do I need to get to the gym? Do I need to breathe more? Do I need food? Do I need to have a difficult conversation? And learning that skill of nurturing is what's going to provide safety to those closest to him.
I love it. Practical, obviously relevant to what's happening and what we're seeing and experiencing, but also practical. That's why I think your leadership is effective, and even your writing, because it helps us and it gives us handles on things that can be effective. I guess before we jump to connecting with you and all of that, for someone who's listening to this conversation and kind of realizing, yeah, this is me. I don't have that inner framework. I don't have that inner stability or emotional maturity. Where do they start? Where can someone just start a process, a journey in the right direction?
I believe that followers of Christ are instruments of righteousness. And what would it look like to have a skill-based righteousness? So there's no shame involved. It's all skill-based. Men like to be shown how to do that, and that's what I do. And so if there's a man listening right now who's maybe built something real, a ministry, a family, a business, but something still feels hollow, and you're really resonating to what's missing, you've prayed, you've pushed, you've performed, I want to say this to that man. The door that you haven't opened is the one that leads inward. And whatever perhaps you've buried has ruled you, but whatever you face can be forged. So the work is hard. Most men cry out for the healing, but not every man wants the cure. But it's the most important work you'll ever do, not for yourself, but for everyone who needs you to show up whole. So if any man is courageous enough to say that, hey, I need that work, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation.
That's great. Well, based on that response, where can our AVAIL audience go to connect with you? Where can they get your book? Where can they know more about your ministry, your resources, and what you offer?
Everything's at jasontwombly.com. And I work with men through Heartsmith coaching, one-on-one coaching. I've also built the Open Heart Journey, which actually launches on Tuesday if people want to jump into this 12-week intensive. And it's a brotherhood of men doing this work together. It's not therapy, Virgil. It's not self-help. It's training, and the kind that rewires how you show up for everyone around you. And so I'd be more than happy to have a discovery call, jasontwombly.com. Everything there about the book and the coaching is right there on the website.
Beautiful. You guys heard it. Jason Twombly, that's TWOMBLY.com. You can get access to the book. You You can purchase the book. You can also take a look at Heartsmith Coaching, which is this spiritual development coaching that is in Jason's wheelhouse. Also, I like what you just mentioned, the Open Heart Journey, which is a 12-week intensive, not therapy, it's actually training. Who is that? Who's a good candidate for that, like for that journey?
Yeah, it's for those guys that are going through thresholds. Maybe they're moving into the second half of life and they're not sure what's happening and they're feeling disorientation. It could be for men who have deconstructed their theology and they're just spinning, like what is going on. It's also for men that have not really alchemized their pain into power and they're stuck in emotions or relational immaturity. So any of those guys, or if they're in burnout, they're the ones I want to talk to.
Yeah, that's great. You guys heard it. JasonTwombly.com. Get some more information there. I want to mention on the topic of resources, the AVAIL Journal, everybody. If you are not yet subscribed to the AVAIL Journal, go to availjournal.com. Try our free trial subscription. It's the best resources, Christian resources for Christian leaders. It's beautiful. It feels good. Looks good. It's got great content like the articles from Jason Twombly. Have you ever enjoyed an AVAIL journal in your hands, Jason?
I have, and I just gave away a few copies. It
Yeah.
is it's a great product. I recommend it.
Yeah, everybody, if you're not already, what are you waiting for? availjournal.com. Jason, I really appreciate you. I appreciate your heart because I know that part of your story has been Lord, guide me through this. Guide me through my pain. Teach me through my pain. And at this point, it's help me train others. Help me help others. Specifically, help me guide men. And I think we need, your voice is needed in these times. What do you want to leave on our hearts as we close off?
I want to leave the reality that alone is hard, but together is better. And we're not made to do this solo. We're made to do all of this in the crucible of relationship. And so I want to add my voice to the many voices of the men who have father hunger. And for those men that are looking for what it looks like to become a man by looking at Jesus, that's what I want to make this invitation. Let's look at him to learn what it looks like to be a man.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I got one last thought here, Jason, as you were talking, which I think could be insightful, and pardon me for not prepping you for this, but I think you can handle it. Jason, if you had a 1-hour coffee with, I don't know, 25-year-old Jason, your younger self, and you had an opportunity in that coffee to share a couple of nuggets of wisdom for life and counsel for life, what would come to the top of that list?
Yeah, I love that. I would have a conversation with younger Jason and let him know that the hunt for external validation will never be found, but you need to find the significance within you and within Trinity. I would let him know that he is one with God and God is one with him, that there's no separation and I don't have to chase the Father anymore. I would let him know that there's redeemed innocence inside of him, and innocence is a superpower. And then I would land it by saying that all of the fire you're going to experience in your life is going to burn away anything and everything that's not of love's kind. And you can stay in the heat of the forge, because just like Michelangelo, the chisel is going to knock away anything that doesn't look like Jesus so that the angel in the marble could be set free.
That's so good. All right. I think we can end it on that note. Jason, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for your vulnerability and your willingness to touch on areas that not everybody has touched on, but I think is so necessary in these times. I think your voice is an important voice. Everybody, you got to make sure you go to jasontwombly.com, access some resources, get some more information on the services that Jason provides. Could be helpful for you or someone you love, someone you know. But we honor you, Jason. We honor your life, your leadership, and we thank you for being obedient to God's call.
Thank you, Virgil. It was an honor to be with you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this episode of the AVAIL Podcast. For more leadership resources, check us out at theartofleadership.com and make sure to claim your free trial subscription of the AVAIL Journal at availjournal.com. As always, I'm your AVAIL Podcast host, Virgil Sierra. Muchas gracias. Thank you for connecting with us to learn the art of leadership here on the AVAIL Podcast.